On 5th July 1977, when General Muhammad Ziaul-Haq began what was to be 11 years of illegal military rule, his very first speech to the nation mentioned the role which he was to continually advocate for women. The Chadar and Chardivari, or their veiling in seclusion, was declared as one of his primary aims. This reference was to set the tone for his rule and for his particular brand of Islamization, which concentrated its repressive measures almost exclusively on women. The imposition of Islam by the state was based on the premise that Islam is one clearly identifiable concept. However, as the Islamic world testifies, Islam is not a monolith. In fact, interpretations exist within countries and even among Muslims with very similar backgrounds. For example, progressive middle and upper class women, when questioned about Islam, articulated different perceptions on their relationship with it.
There is a force, there is some sort of unsolved mystery, and if you like, it could be God.
शायद ये मेरी अपनी ज़ाती हो, औरों का ना मसला हो, कि जब भी मैं किसी चीज़ से परेशान होती हूँ, तो उस परेशानी को दूर करने का मेरे पास जो तरीका है, वो ये है कि मैं उसे अल्लाह के पास ले जाती हूँ. सहारा है.
It's I've had a life which I think, relatively speaking, has been quite varied. Lots of dramatic changes, both geographical and personal and so on. And it has remained one steady thread through it. So it gives me a sense of continuity about who I am.
Well, I guess I just think of it as something which is a part of me. In a sense, I have assimilated it.
I couldn't depend on religion to soothe me. It didn't soothe me. It soothed my father because I saw him saying his prayers. And he was really as if humble before God. And it impressed me. I won't say it didn't impress me because I thought, here's a belief and it's so tremendous. But it didn't soothe. I didn't depend on religion to safeguard me.
I haven't really seriously thought about religion, or it doesn't play any role in my life. And that reflects, I think, in my attitude towards my children, because I haven't taught them how to say their prayers. And Quran, to the extent that they needed to do in their schools. And I never asked them to offer their prayers or to fast, or I haven't taught them any religious rituals. And I don't believe in religious rituals myself.
Mind you, one doesn't just pray only because one needs things. For many times one prays because one wants to express a sense of something, which, as I said, precisely because you can see I'm at a loss for words. That is what prayer is all about again, that it expresses for oneself both in serenity as well as sorrow, and much, much more, all that which cannot be put into words in human discourse. And so that is my container for these feelings.
There were moments of crisis, and I would mention the death of my parents as being particularly critical in the past 5 years of my life. And I found that, it was very different. I didn't need to say an extra prayer. I didn't need to do anything very extraordinary with my religion. It comforted me, it provided me with an understanding of what was happening to me.
Religion never really, my brother died, I didn't resort to religion. I mean, I was in the deepest of depressions, but somehow, and there was all this ritual going on around me in the house and my mother and all of that, but it didn't seem to answer the questions, and it didn't seem to give me what I was looking for. So I never resorted to looking into it.
To me, something like the Quran, if a book has to have universal validity, as the Quran says, it does, then it has to make sense to everybody. It has to make sense to somebody who has a first grade education, somebody who has no education, and somebody who has a PhD. And the challenge there is that one brings to it the level of thinking that one has developed. But unfortunately, a lot of people, they have no problem reading Shakespeare, but when it comes to the Quran, they will insist that it be given to them at the fourth grade level.
Well, I guess as a Muslim, I accept that it is the word of God through a messenger who was a mortal. And therefore, it is the word of God mediated through a mortal.
हमें मजहब होते हुए भी हम जो मुल्ला हमें बात कहता था या जो बड़ी बैकवर्ड सी बातें हमें लगती थी, हमें ये लगता था कि ये मजहब नहीं। हमारे जहन में शुरू से ये बात थी कि इस्लाम जो है वो बड़ा एक प्रोग्रेसिव मजहब है।
Yes, I think it is definitely liable to historical interpretations. I think that it cannot be an ahistorical document for me. It has to be rooted in time and place and be specific.
These are guidelines given to you. It does not mean that you continue to interpret those guidelines as they were interpreted to the letter.
You know, occasionally when I'm faced with questions, for example, as a woman, one often is faced with situations where religion seems to be a hindrance to what you want to achieve. At that moment, I resist it, I fight with it, but I'm easy with it. I'm comfortable with it. It is a part of my heritage, and like everything else, I do not expect it to be without contradictions and ambiguities.
I'll tell you what the problem, what people want are singular answers. And whether it's the Quran or whether it's William Shakespeare or whether it is physics, there are no singular answers. And what amazes me that people have no problem accepting it in physics or Shakespeare or economics. But when it comes down to the Quran, कि नहीं जी क्योंकि हमें singular answer नहीं है, therefore this is meaningless. किसी चीज में भी दुनिया में singular answer नहीं है.
As women organized against discriminatory laws, a debate arose. Some fought these measures from within Islam, either because they believed that the state's interpretation did not reflect its true spirit, or that they had to fight on the grounds defined by the state. Others believed the struggle should be fought without any reference to religion at all.
इस्लाम से बिल्कुल इरादा होकर बात करना जो है वो बिल्कुल सूट नहीं करेगी और आपकी बात कोई नहीं सुनेगा। लेकिन जब हम उसी मैदान में बात करेंगे, उसी रिलेटिव्स में बात करेंगे कि भाई ये आप कहते हैं कि इस्लाम ये और मैं कहती हूँ नहीं इस्लाम ये, और जब मैं वो इंसानों के करीब तरीन बात को कहूँगी कि ये इस्लाम है, तो जो लोग इस्लाम को भी मानते हैं और ये भी चाहते हैं कि उनके मसाइल का हल भी हो, तो वो मेरे साथ ज़्यादा आएंगे, मुल्ला के साथ नहीं जाएंगे.
If you get into the religious arguments, then you will never win. Because some way or the other you will get caught. Because how can you demand those rights which Quran has not given you?
But suppose there were rights the Quran had given. There are some rights in the Quran that...
But you can't go beyond that. It means that
No.
if you are arguing on those lines, then you are accepting those limits which Quran has laid down for you. And if you want to operate within that framework, then you accept those limitations. So I always thought that one should not get involved into this religious arguments, because we have been demanding much more than what comes under the purview of Quran. For example, this equal status or equal rights. Then one has to get out of this framework. So it is better to use the human rights platform and to bring in the Charter of United Nations rather than trying to win this battle on the religious grounds.
हमारा ये ख्याल था, हमेशा वहाँ पर भी हमने ये नुक्ता नज़र रखा कि हमें इस बहस में नहीं पढ़ना चाहिए, क्योंकि मसला ये आप मौलवियों से
इस ग्राउंड में जीत नहीं सकते, तो आप किस किस का जवाब ढूंढ के लाओगे? वैसे भी आप कुरान में से क्या क्या ढूंढ लोगे? सब चीज़ें आपके फेवर में तो नहीं है, तो वो चीज़ें आप कैसे बयान करोगे? वो कुछ भी ला सकते हैं, एक इशू उठा दें, चाहे वो कोई लोगों के लिए इम्पोर्टेंस का हो या ना हो, उस पर फनेटिसिज्म है, जो कुछ भी हो सकता है। इसलिए हम उस बहस में आए ही ना, हम अपने इश्यूज़ को, जो हमारे मसाइल हैं, हम उनको उठाएं और उसी के रेफरेंस से लोग हमें समझेंगे, हमारे साथ जुड़ेंगे।
And you tell them that, well, you have to demand justice, fair play as a human being, then they listen to you. It doesn't have to be on the religious ground always that you convince them. Just because Islam has given you this right, you should demand that. But when you tell them that as a human being, it is your right to be treated equally, then they accept it.
I did think that we should get into the whole religious question. I was one of those who did think that we needed to, because as a purist, one may take a different position. As a theoretician, one may. If one was locked up in an ivory tower and one was not an activist, one may be in a more comfortable position of having no contradictions and no ambiguities and no struggles. You adopt a position which is absolutely pure and you stay with it. But if you are an activist, as we were, those of us who were resisting what Zia was doing, then I think you need to acquaint yourself with what is concerning people, or what is being debated, or what is being used, or what is being manipulated at that point in time, and that was religion.
I think, Bunny, I worked in the trade union, and by trade union I mean trade union wives and so on, for many years. Never has anybody questioned me. Have you said your prayers? Do you say your prayers? Their questions are, what's going to happen to us? Will our children get education? Can you help us? I've sold this, I've sold that to educate my child. Will he get a job? Main questions.
The middle class woman will say that Quran says that we must obey our husband and our father and do this. But women from Kachiyawadi's, they're not so interested in interpreting Quran and saying that they won't tell you that Quran says that obey your husband even if he is a drug addict, and even if he is not fulfilling his duties, then you must go in and you must obey him. But a middle class woman will say that.
Certainly religion plays different role in different classes of society, be it men, women, anybody. But to say that religion is not the concern, or the rural poor are not affected by religion, is really, to my way of thinking, absolutely incorrect. Because whether the rural poor are religious or not, whether they follow the prescriptions of Islam is another question. But the fact is that Islam or religion, through custom, through tradition, through superstition, affects their lives daily. And it is the stick that they are used to be beaten with. It is not how religious they are. It is what is the role of religion in their lives. How is religion used to oppress them?
They need God. They need peers. They need pundits. They need all these people to go to. Will I have a child? They go to pandit. Will my son get a job? They go. Because what else? For their treatments, they go and have this mud from the village, because there are no doctors. Tomorrow you set up a clinic, a good hospital near 6 villages. I'll see how many women will go to these peers. They won't.
They should be empowered to deal with it at the level at which it affects them. They should be able to point to the rights that are given to them within their religion and say, I'm sorry, this is out. This is something that my religion has given you no sanction to oppress me this way.
So it was, religious questions are, I feel, always put on them to ask back. I don't feel that they feel like, because they think the religion is a private thing. I really feel that religion should never be questioned in any form.
Yes, you don't need to raise it, but when it is raised, And that was the problem that we had during the years. We were not the ones to raise it. And believe me, I don't think religion ought to be raised at all. I would not actively go out and raise it, but I would certainly be prepared to pick up cudgels and to be able to combat using my religion the rights that are given to women under Islam, using that when it is necessary.
Well, I think that one should deal with things as they happen. At that stage, I think we needed to deal with the issue because we were being, jabbed with this daily. Now, I don't think religion is an issue that should be played around with by an organization that is primarily securing rights for women. I don't believe that, but I do believe that since we were at that time confronted and we were called upon to answer certain questions, we did have to know more and thoroughly about religion and about different viewpoints. But that doesn't mean being religious.
Bunny, while I don't mind. Now I feel that I don't mind your people having, bringing Islam has the right and so forth. Just to put them off slightly. But I still feel that when you're doing mass work, please don't bring religion into it.
If challenged, I think we ought to be prepared to point to religion and to use religion as a liberator insofar as you can use it.
They should definitely tell them that the religion which the mullahs are putting forward before you is not the religion. It is a religion to put you off to sleep. They should say it. They should say it.
So they should talk on it.
They should talk. If it comes to that, if it comes to argument, they should talk and say, no, this religion is just to keep you drowsy.
My focus is women's movement. Because maybe when we are fighting against state or against dictatorship, then Islam can play an important role, a radical role. But when it comes to women's issues and women's movement, I'm doubtful.
But the Quran can be interpreted. After all, every day in courts of law, is the law not interpreted? Is the constitution not interpreted? Does the Shariat bench not give interpretations and conflicting interpretations of the same thing? On the one hand, the government says that a woman cannot be a judge. On the other hand, the Shariat bench gives you a ruling saying a woman can be a judge. And of course, the wrangling is still going on. Can a woman be a head of a state? Can a woman do this? Can a woman do that? And from within your learned scholars of Islam, you are getting 72 different positions. So if there is a perspective, everybody is bringing a perspective to religion. So why should women not be bringing their own perspective?
We just cannot totally disregard the importance of religion. Because it is important to the majority of people. But how do we use it so that we are not caught up in this rigmarole of religious debates and all that? We haven't discussed it as yet. I'm talking about the women activists in the women's movement, and to what extent we can strategically use religion to go forward. And when should we stop using it? Where should we stop using it? There should be a cutoff point.
Although Pakistan now has a democratically elected government, the pressure to make Pakistan a theocratic state continues. Consequently, the women's movement must still grapple with the question of how to mobilize women against it. On the one hand, if they do so without addressing Islam, the movement is liable to be marginalized in a Muslim state. On the other hand, if it chooses to use Islam, the movement reinforces the notion that ultimately women are only entitled to what Islam has determined for them. And given that all religions are inherently patriarchal, there will necessarily be a limit to the extent that women can find liberation within them.